Hello, I'm Tony Vlahos, Chief Marketing Officer of ExecuNet, and I have the complete joy of speaking today with Martin Lindstrom. Martin, of course, is a world-renowned brand building expert. He's the author of like a half dozen extraordinary books on branding and marketing, and his latest book is all about small data. So we're going to touch on all of these things in the next few minutes, the short time we have together. I know we could talk forever, but we're going to start with small data. And in fact, I'm going to start with big data. Big data has been showering us. It's more of a tsunami than a shower. In fact, the Harvard Business Review declared a couple of years back that data scientist was the sexiest job of the 21st century. Tell me what the problem is with big data, Martin.
Well, I don't need to say more than the election in the United States.
There you go.
And all the predictions. I mean, New York Times, based on 10 independent polls, basically predicted in 85% chances that Hillary Clinton would win, and the rest of history. I think it's fair to say that conventional research, whether that is polling or also big data, have a fundamental flaw built into it. Polling, because what we say and what we really feel is completely different. Okay. But when it comes to big data, there's a little thing missing, and I call that small data, where big data is all about seeking correlations. You need a hypothesis. You need to search for something which is then creating the foundation to verify if this is right and wrong, and that is called small data. And small data is really what I define as seemingly insignificant observations in our lives. And what's so fantastic about this is that this is where you find the really insight about a brand or a product or a service. And once you find that little nugget, then you can use all the big data to verify it. The problem is today, people are doing it in reverse. They're starting with mining these billions of data points, and then they end up somewhere blind because we are overwhelmed by all these numbers. I bet you most of you guys watching right now feel overwhelmed by data. True? True?
Hands up.
Hands up, me too. So this is where small data comes into play. We find first the hypothesis, what I call the causation, and then we have the correlation with big data.
Right. And I know you're fond of Legos, but another great example of how marketers got it right. They were looking, well, you tell me the story, I'm not going to tell you.
Well, I was just enjoying relaxing here, right? No, listen, the story is very simple. In 2003, the Lego company was really struggling to survive. They learned from big data that the instant gratification generation had just arrived. And what it meant was that kids had no patience whatsoever to play with Lego bricks. Now, Lego, as a consequence of that, decided to change the size of the Lego brick from those tiny bricks to gigantic building blocks. Yeah. And in a matter of 6 months, the sales went down 30%. And Christmas 2003 was really, sort of a destiny year for Lego because they were close to bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. That was the moment where a small group broke out of Lego, moved into homes of consumers, and ended up in this 11-year-old kid's bedroom where they sit on the floor and they ask this kid one simple question: what are you most proud of? And this kid pauses for a second and he points at the shelf where there's an old worn-down Snicker. And he takes it down, and the Lego team is completely perplexed. Why? Why didn't he say a Nintendo, PlayStation, or Sony, or something like that? And he answers, because I'm the best skater in town. And when you're a really good skater, he said, you slide down this skateboard, and that ankle which is traded on the side of your soul is my evidence I'm the best skater in town. Now this is interesting. The fact that the kid was willing to spend hundreds, if not thousands of hours of sliding down and fine-tuning that ankle showed to Lego that the instant gratification generation was wrong. Right. And out of that, they changed the size of the Lego brick back to the small ones again. They created the Lego movie. We know it's one of the most popular movies last year. And also they went down the path of storytelling. And the rest of history today, Lego is #1 in the world.
So as marketers, we need to train ourselves to notice little things that tell us some real truth that the big data doesn't show us.
I think it's, yeah, absolutely. I think the issue here is that the marketeers, more than anything else, need to become the ambassador on behalf of the consumer. If you're really good, you are so good that you can jump into the shoes of the consumer and pretend like you are the consumer, think like the person, and really have established an instinct so powerful that you just know what they're doing. Now, the only way you can do that is not to sit behind the screen and flick through billions of data points. It is to get your hands dirty. It is to get into the homes, live with the consumers, and really pick up these small data. And small data, as I said, is these seemingly insignificant observations you make, like the sneaker, like that little figurine, like that mask hanging on the wall, like how we place our shoes. And all that stuff, in the end of the day, is indicating exactly where there is a potential. Mm-hmm. And that is what marketers have to be good at. They have to recover their instinct.
Let's stick with marketing. So I'm the Chief Marketing Officer. Everyone knows what the M stands for when I say I'm the CMO. What should it stand for? Because I know you have a certain feeling about how marketing is done. And that's a wonderful, direct, amplified feeling. Should I be the Chief Meaning Officer? Should I be the Chief Make Stuff Officer? What should I really be thinking about my vocation and how I do my job?
I think it's very simple. I think you have to be the CCO, the Chief Customer Officer, and I think at the end of the day, you need to represent the voice of the consumer. You, on the other hand, own the brand, and you need to make sure these two are mirroring each other. And the best thing to say here is that you and your role is to become the evangelist, the storyteller inside the organization, and make sure the organization is not losing contact with reality. Because here's the issue. Today, companies have lost contact with reality. They're sort of floating off in their own little island, and then we have the consumers going this way. And that's the reason why you see one company after another is struggling. And I bet you have tried, and you guys watching, have all tried a scary thing, and that is politics takes up more time in turning the organization than actually you doing your proper job. Today, most companies are so engraved in politics that you're trying to struggle finding out what the right focus point is. And this is where this consumer idea comes into play. Because what you should do is to change the focus from being inwards looking to actually look from outside in. And you do that by bringing the consumer inside. And so what I do is, it's crazy, I'm moving with consumers, and I've done that around 2,000 times over the last 10 years, but I also bring the clients with me. Right. And they sit next to me, and we interview an ordinary person somewhere in Brazil in the Ferrari, whatever, and then we see firsthand that emotion. And as we do that, we take those two interviews, and it's crazy. You can do 15 interviews and change the strategy of a company if you really are observant and do the right stuff. And as this ambassador now comes inside the organization, people are changing the focus from politics and silos to actually focusing on the ordinary consumer. And that is so simple, and it's so difficult. And that's where you are responsible.
Right. That's a wonderful vision and a clear one. Sticking with, you mentioned the word evangelism, and there are some obvious correlations between branding and marketing and religion. And there's a dark side to all of the above, which is fear. A lot of us in marketing market fear. Talk to me about fear and why we should stop doing that.
Well, I think first of all, the election in the United States is based on fear.
Absolutely.
But I think most of the stuff we see around the world is fear-based. You have to remember there's an area in our brain called the amygdala, which is the fear-based center. And it overrides basically everything. So you won't hear anything, you won't smell anything, touch anything if fear is there. And unfortunately in marketing, fear has become and has always been really a very prominent way of doing marketing. Meaning, are you really a good mom? Or do you really want to have that virus? Or have you taken that pill to avoid being sick? All these different factors come into play. So fear is a major component. Now, the bad side of this is that it's escalating. Once you've been affected by fear, you become more primed to want to seek more fear. And that's the reason why we in a society now are afraid of everything. We're afraid of sexual harassment, we're afraid of touching each other, we're afraid of viruses, we're afraid of crime, we're afraid of not eating the right way and sitting the right way and looking the right way and all that stuff. Sure. So fear is really driving everything. Now, of course, marketing in many ways will play into that, and I don't know where my stand is, because sometimes it's good and sometimes it's really bad. But it is a tool you have to use sometimes, and when you use it very carefully. And most important, think about one thing. You should never do to the consumer something you wouldn't do to your own kids. And if you have that in the back of your mind, then I'm pretty sure you're safe, right?
That's wonderful advice. So last question, Martin. The brands that win in the future will be or will do, fill in the blank for me.
The brands in the future will not be global. I think the concept of global brands is dying. It doesn't mean we'll see Coca-Cola fading away within the next 5 years, but I think actually we will see Coca-Cola as a phenomenon of a global brand, that idea of being the same uniform type of feel around the world will start to fade away. And I'll explain why. Transparency is the biggest enemy in our society right now. It sounds crazy because we all love it. But the reality is, as soon as transparency is ruling, we compare notes with everyone else. That means I become insecure because he's doing much better than I am, he owns much more, he gets a higher salary. Suddenly we don't feel good enough. And in the society now, we really don't feel good anymore. I'm always number 256,000 person in the rank. And that's the reason why Brexit happened. And that's the reason why the Colombian issue happened. That's the reason why things happen in the Philippines and why it happened here in the United States. Because people retract back to small tribes. And those tribes, they have a little voice, they have some power, they have influence, and they're being heard. And I think what's interesting is that big global brands do not enable the individual in a local country, in a local tribe, to be heard. They're being heard, but they're heard in a superficial way. So this is really my answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and your insights today.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. We could go on and on. All right, guys, enjoy.